It's so bright. I just brought out my ring light because it's been so gloomy here the last few days that it's like dark. Like it's the middle of the day, but it's dark. It looks like it's about to storm. So I had to bring out my ring light because it was like too dark to even film. But sometimes I'm just like not in the mood for a ring light. You know what I mean? It's like my ring light's pretty big. It's bright. It's in your face. It's like a whole production. But here we are because I wasn't going to make up some excuse as to why I couldn't film. Also, I really apologize for the fact that I know this video is going to be extremely echoey. Apartment update. I basically still have no furniture. I did purchase a couch, but I don't have anything else really. I still have stuff in boxes. I have like one table, one couch, and a giant mirror, and that's pretty much all I have going on. I'm not rushing because I don't want to buy stuff just to buy it. You know what I mean? Like I'm buying little things here and there. I just bought this really cute like couch thing for my balcony. Well, it's not a couch, but it is. You know what I mean? I'm buying stuff here and there that I really like, and I know it'll all come together, but yeah, I don't want to like rush the process. But in the meantime, it's really echoey and loud in here, so I apologize. Anyways, why are we here today? Oh, Venus retrograde. I want to have a chat about Venus retrograde. If you watched my last video, then you obviously know that I really want to start making content that's just more casual, rather than like a whole structured video with timestamps and the whole thing. Like I just want to have a conversation about astrology because in my real life, that's all I do all day is talk about astrology. And there's so many times where I'm like having a conversation with somebody and I'm like, damn, why isn't this on a video? Here I go again, like, do I start a podcast? But no. I just want to have a casual chat about Venus retrograde because it's quickly approaching. Venus stations retrograde on the 22nd of July. So we're already in Venus's shadow. So you might already be experiencing some challenges arising in areas of your life, such as your relationships or your finances. But the thing about Venus retrograde is that it really can be a very challenging retrograde for a lot of people. And we're going to talk about why that is. I want to give you my perspective on Venus retrograde. I understand not only the energy of Venus really well. Venus is my ruling planet. But also this Venus retrograde is in Leo, and I have Venus in Leo. I have a Leo stellium with Venus in a conjunction with Mars and Jupiter. So I understand this energy well. So anyways, enough about me. Venus and Leo, let's just talk about me the whole time. But anyways, I want to chat about this Venus retrograde specifically because, hot take, it's going to be an extremely triggering Venus retrograde for a lot of people, and I want to explain why that is. Now, with that being said, Venus retrograde is always a really incredible time for healing. Healing internally, healing relationships, making a lot of really beautiful progress, but I also think it's going to be challenging for a lot of people, myself included, along the way. If you don't know what Venus retrograde is, Venus is the planet that rules over relationships, love. It's the planet of like give and take and reciprocity. It's also the planet that rules over money and finances. It rules over value. And it also is the planet that rules beauty and aesthetic and luxury. Relationships tend to be sort of like the main focal point of Venus. So when Venus is retrograde, basically the way that I would explain it is that it kind of takes a spotlight and puts it on those things in our life. Relationships, our finances, our values, maybe our appearance, okay? It puts a spotlight on those things. A lot of times you'll hear a retrograde described as the planet slows down. But rather than it slowing down, it almost, think of it as the planet zooms in. So Venus stations retrograde and it zooms in, our focus zooms in on our relationships, on our money, on the things that we value, and it sort of forces us to take a really good look at things. Now, retrogrades, the reason they are known for bringing back the past is because they cause us to revisit things that either we've been avoiding, pushing, off to the back burner, we don't want to deal with it, we don't want to acknowledge it, or it causes us to revisit things that we left unfinished. So an area where there needs to be some sort of clarity or some sort of closure, a solution to something. And what often happens is that our attention is being drawn towards the flaws or things that are out of place, things that are maybe not working. Retrogrades are really a time for introspection. It's a time for reflection. Our attention is usually pulled inwards on those topics, on those areas that that planet rules over. Things that are not working really come into our awareness and they become very obvious and very apparent. They're really getting our attention. Maybe we didn't notice it before. Again, maybe we were avoiding it and we didn't want to deal with it, but now it's sort of staring at us in the face and we realize that we got to deal with it. So this is why when Venus stations retrograde, there will be turbulence in our relationships. And that's really the main thing I want to talk about in this video. Of course, it's going to depend on your own chart. Every planetary shift and transit is going to be interacting with your chart and your personal planet in its own unique way. So for some people, Venus retrograde will be about relationships. For some people, there might be a Venus retrograde where you really are focused on your finances, your income. For some people, maybe it has to do with the home. Maybe it has to do with your appearance, right? If Venus is going to transit your first house when it's retrograde, yeah, you're probably going to be focused on your image. You're going to be focused on you. But let's say it's going through your fourth house. That's your home, you know? So it really depends on what's happening in your chart. It could be your friends, right? But relationships do tend to be a focus for a lot of people, even if there are other aspects to it as well for you. Because the thing is, if there are issues in a relationship that need to be addressed, or if there is a relationship that really needs to end in your life, Venus retrograde is going to bring that into your awareness, okay? It's gonna be the time where changes have to be made, where things need to be addressed, where there needs to be progress and clarity and closure of some sort when it comes to the significant relationships in your life. So you will find that a lot of stuff sort of comes up to the surface within our relationships during Venus retrograde. Maybe it's arguing or insecurities, again, things that we've been avoiding that we don't want to deal with. There just could be a lot of friction. There could be misunderstandings within our relationships. You could even really realize where you might not be compatible with certain people, things that you weren't aware of before really make themselves known. Sometimes this will be that a relationship breaks down. You end a relationship during Venus retrograde, but keep in mind that Venus retrograde isn't going to ruin and destroy a relationship that is meant for you, that is healthy, that is still serving you. This is going to be relationships that have reached their expiration date and you already should have cut ties or set a boundary or something. Those are the relationships that there might actually finally be an end to during Venus retrograde. So you have to use discernment because you know if something's not right for you. You always know deep down, right? What will happen though is you might find yourself fighting with your partner more than usual during Venus retrograde, or it suddenly seems like there's these new issues that arise. But really, it's trying to just shine a light on what's already there that really needs to be addressed. So just like people say during Mercury retrograde, don't, sign a document. Don't end a relationship during Venus retrograde just because you get triggered or just because there is an issue that comes up. You really should only be ending relationships that you know you should be ending in the first place. You know what I mean? We'll talk a little more about that later. I'm going on a rant now, but here's why, okay? Here's why Venus retrograde. I will go on a rant about 8 million things in one video. Like, if I'm trying to tell you something, we're taking 18 detours to get to the end point. But I want to talk specifically about why Venus retrograde is unique. And if you use it properly, it can be a very productive time in your relationships. You can make leaps and bounds. There could be a lot of healing that takes place. A lot of times when there are issues in a relationship, when we have issues with our partner, we tend to just kind of look outwardly. And we're able to point out what somebody else is doing wrong. You know, you did this to me, you triggered me, you made a mistake. You know, like you're looking at the flaws, but you're really just sort of looking at the other person. Okay, it's easy to do that. It's easy to just look outwardly because we're thinking about the way that somebody makes us feel, you know? And so it's really easy to say, well, you did this to me, or this is something you need to work on, or this is your problem, you know? Not saying that that's what everybody does. You know, obviously we want to be doing self-reflection, but that's why I love Venus retrograde. Venus retrograde provides us with a really unique perspective because not only does it shine a light on the areas of our relationships that aren't working, but it also causes us to do a lot of introspection. So rather than just seeing flaws within a relationship or things that we don't like in a relationship, we also get a really, really clear vision of the role that we play in the relationship. So it's a very unique situation because you're not just seeing things from one lens. You're seeing, okay, there's this issue coming up in my relationship, but I also kind of see how I've self-sabotaged, or I also kind of see how I played a role in this. I also see where I went wrong. Venus retrograde will do this, and it will do this very blatantly and abruptly. Like you will have an argument with your partner and you will instantly see your own bullshit. So it can be a big reality check, but that's why it's a great thing because you can actually really work together. You can work through issues together. You can heal together. Venus is the planet of love and relationships, but it's also about value and worth. We know that the relationship that we have with ourselves, the way that we think about ourselves, the way that we talk about ourselves, what we believe about ourselves, how much self-esteem or confidence, how much value we put on ourselves directly reflects in our relationships. It's projected outwards. Every relationship in our life, especially those really intimate romantic relationships, they are just a mirror. Everyone else is really just us pushed out. And the way that we view people, the way that we comprehend other people's behavior is heavily, related to our own internal state of being. That's why people that are angry at the world, they actually hold a lot of anger and resentment and maybe self-hatred within themselves, right? And it's being pushed out, but they're seeing it as the world sucks. So this becomes a really big theme, a really big focal point when Venus is retrograde. We really see our relationships and we're able to sort of compare it to, well, how do I treat myself? How much worth and value do I place on myself? Because now I'm actually seeing it play out in my relationships. It's sort of like the veil falls and you're able to sort of see how all of the dots connect. And that's when you can actually make some real changes, right? Things need to be brought into your awareness. If something needs to change, but you're not aware that it's there in the first place, then it's never gonna change. Venus retrograde will shine a light on your relationships and then it will flash that light right back onto you. Our insecurities, any of our old pain, old trauma, wounds, our triggers, we really are able to see that clearly and we're able to see the way that it's being played out within our relationships. Another thing you'll see a lot too when Venus is retrograde is this is when people will sort of wake up if they are involved in some sort of connection that is really unhealthy or toxic or unfair, because we're doing that inner reflection during Venus retrograde. And maybe you will start to see that you are settling for somebody that doesn't deserve you. You are selling yourself short. You're allowing somebody to treat you in a way that's not fair. It'll become a lot clearer to you because you are doing that introspective work on yourself. So Venus retrograde can be a great time for healing yourself, which then of course heals and strengthens your relationships, weeds out the relationships that are really not aligned with you. But the process can be challenging. You might get triggered. You might have to feel some of those insecurities that come up. You might suddenly be aware of some self-sabotaging behaviors that you didn't realize were there, or that you've been trying to avoid. Maybe you know it's there, but you don't want to deal with it. Those things are going to come up to the surface so you can gain clarity, so you can gain understanding, and so you can move forward and make appropriate decisions within your relationships to hopefully strengthen your bonds, strengthen your sense of self, strengthen your sense of self-esteem, self-respect, all of those things. So that's why I think Venus retrograde is really unique, because like I said, it really shines a light not just on our relationships, but also on us. Now, the reason why I think this Venus retrograde is potentially going to be triggering for some people more than Venus retrograde might already usually be is because it's happening in the sign of Leo. Now, there is this very youthful, lighthearted, creative, playful, romantic, joyful energy to Leo. For some people, this Venus retrograde is going to be about getting back to what you love, getting back to your innocence, getting back to your creative hobbies. But there's another side of Leo that we need to talk about. Leo is the inner child. Okay, that's where the innocent, youthful, creative, playful energy comes from with Leo. Leo is the inner child. When we talk about the 5th house in a natal chart, which is, the Leo house, you could say, we always say that, the 5th house is the fun house. It's about flirting and hobbies and having fun and pleasure and play. And while that's the case, there's a deeper layer to that 5th house. You can see a lot about somebody's childhood by looking at their 5th house, because the 5th house is the inner child. So there's a deeper aspect to Leo. Leo is an energy that really requires validation, reassurance. It requires attention. What does that sound like? That sounds like a child. A child needs to be loved. It needs to know that it's important. That is a big part of Leo energy. If you meet people that have really strong Leo placements, like we always give the stereotype of Leo is the center of attention, the superstar. Leos want you to worship the ground that they walk on. It's deeper than that. It's because these people that have Venus in Leo, people that have a Leo moon, people that have strong Leo energy, a Leo sun, a Leo stellium, even a Leo rising, these people really need your validation. And I don't say that in a bad way. A lot of people with strong Leo energy, their love language tends to be words of affirmation. They need to hear that you love them. They need to hear that they are important and special. They need to be reminded of it. It's not that they want you to worship the ground that they walk on. It's that they will feel neglected if they don't know that they are loved. And they need to be seen. They need to be heard. They need to be recognized. Leo is also the ego. It's our pride. If there are relationships, let's say you're married or you're in an intimate relationship with somebody where you don't really feel appreciated, you don't feel like you're important, you don't feel like you're a priority, those things are really gonna flare up when Venus is retrograde. Those things are gonna be coming up to the surface and potentially, triggering you quite harshly, because it's that inner child. It's that inner child that needs that love, that affection, that attention, that recognition. And so if you're not getting that in a relationship, that is going to need to be addressed when Venus is retrograde, because it's going to become really apparent to you. If there's any sort of feelings of neglect, or feeling like you aren't valued, feeling like you aren't important enough to somebody, those things are going to come up to the surface. So I do think Venus retrograde in Leo will be triggering for people, because it's going to be triggering that inner child, those basic needs It can also be a really great opportunity to heal and to understand what your own needs are. Understand what you value in a relationship, what is essential in a relationship, what you need from a partner. You can really gain a much deeper understanding of those things and, recognize your own worth, recognize what you deserve, and then be able to clearly see where you're not actually getting that. My advice for this specific Venus retrograde is to use discernment, but also be brave and be courageous. That is the spirit of Leo. Don't be afraid to express what you need, and then have the courage to walk away or set a firm boundary if someone is not receptive to that. And of course it's a two-way street, right? Give and take and meet people halfway, but don't sell yourself short. This is a really great opportunity to really recognize what you need, what you deserve, and then make adjustments if you need to. You really can make a lot of progress this Venus retrograde, but you've got to be willing to look within. The planets can't make us do anything. They'll bring stuff into our awareness, but then you have to decide what to do with that. So that was just sort of what was on my mind about this Venus retrograde. We are in Venus's shadow. So the things that sort of come up to the surface during Venus's shadow are the things that you're going to be working through and addressing and healing, working on healing when Venus is actually retrograde. Another thing that you see quite often when Venus is retrograde is relationships coming back from the past. When Mercury is retrograde, that's when your ex texts you, right? When Mars is retrograde, maybe that's when a booty call comes back into your life for another round of fun. But Venus retrograde will literally bring back an entire relationship. Okay? This person isn't just texting you, they're asking you out. You're hanging out with them. You're giving the relationship a second, 8th, 30th chance. Venus retrograde is notorious for that. Now, if that does happen, it is because there's some sort of unfinished business. There's some lesson that hasn't been learned or some sort of clarity that you've yet to get. So, that's why this person is returning. But I will tell you that relationships that start under the influence of Venus retrograde, or relationships that are given another chance during Venus retrograde, they really don't tend to work out. They don't tend to last. I hate saying don't start a relationship during Venus retrograde, it's never gonna work. But the reality is that it often doesn't. I actually got back with an ex once during Venus retrograde, and it did give me the clarity that I needed. The relationship did not work out, but it was a relationship that at the time, we had been broken up for 8 months. And there was a little part of me that was I wonder if it would have worked out. They came back during Venus retrograde. We fully got back into a relationship. And then it was not very long after that it became painfully clear that we were not right for each other and that this was not a relationship that I wanted to pursue, and it ended for the final time. Do whatever you want. You want to get back with your ex, you want to hook up with some loser for the 10th time, that's your life. But also, do not make any drastic appearance changes, especially something that's very drastic like plastic surgery. Do not be doing that when Venus is retrograde. Don't do it. You don't do it. You will regret it. It's either gonna go wrong or it's not gonna turn out the way that you want. Do not chop all your hair off and dye it purple when Venus is retrograde. I also don't recommend making any big luxurious purchases. Don't do that either. There will be something wrong with it. You will have buyer's remorse. You will wish you didn't do it. Venus retrograde is not the time to be making drastic decisions when it comes to relationships, your money, your looks, even your home. You know what Venus retrograde is a great time for? Finishing the home project that you gave up on 8 months ago. But it's not the time to decide that you want to remodel your kitchen and you're going to start a brand new kitchen remodel during Venus retrograde. And I'm not saying it's going to be some, terrible disaster, but what you're going to find is that it ends up being twice the price, twice as long to get it done. You're gonna run into issues left and right, and you're gonna be why did I even do this in the first place? It's just gonna end up being annoying, and it's gonna cause you more stress than anything. So yeah, those are my Venus retrograde tips. But if you're in like a toxic relationship that you know should have been over 2 years ago and it falls apart during Venus retrograde, yeah, take that as your chance to walk away and move on with your life, okay? Those are my thoughts on Venus retrograde in Leo, the event of the summer. Let me know what house Venus is going to be moving through for you during its retrograde. I love you guys. I will see you in my next video. Bye.